Advisors, the key to growing your school. I am your host, Violeta, aka Violet Tamayo. I'm a senior account executive with Lead Squared and have been working closely with folks like the ones on our panel today, specifically in the higher education space in a consultative manner to find solutions to topics like the ones we'll be discussing today with our experts, Anthony, Matt, Carla. So let's quickly review a few of housekeeping items before we get started. To avoid any distractions or any background noise, all attendees will be muted. So this means you don't have to worry about your pets or little ones running in the house if you're working from home. And if you have any issues with the volume, try clicking on the setting wheel to either change your audio or device or adjust the volume. We are hoping to pique your interest and conjure up some ideas. So there's going to be a Q&A session at the end of the webinar. Please use the chat function to ask your questions, and we will get to as many as we can. Also, we do follow up after the webinar in case we don't address all of the questions today. So we do know there are a lot of admissions folks joining us today, executive level positions. So feel free to say hello in the chat. Let us know where you're joining us from. I'm hailing from sunny, sort of sunny and cold El Paso, Texas. Now, I'm going to hand it over to Carla, our moderator today, but I do want to just give a brief introduction about Carla. So Carla is an MBA, a 27-year operations and higher education executive who provides consulting services to health and beauty, the health and beauty industry, licensed professionals and school owners. Her focus is on initiatives that drive overall business growth and profitability through her proprietary custom GPS or growth profit strategies. Carla's focus has always been on key business drivers that enhance the student acquisition, engagement, retention, and program completion, which is really important. And Carla is solutions driven first. Her motto, which I love, is, individually, I can achieve a lot. However, collectively, we can achieve even greater. So that just gets me back to our point. Thank you so much to our panelists that are here sharing just graciously, with everybody that's listening here today. I'll turn it over to you, Carla. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Violet. I am excited. It's almost in my head. I always tell people this. I hear the cheering going on like, yay!
Yes.
I'm really high-spirited, guys. I probably drove my mom crazy, but I definitely want to say thank you, first and foremost, for Lead Square for hosting this, inviting me to moderate it, and also to our great panelists that we have today, just sharing with our audience. And so we're going to move right in, and I want to begin by introducing our esteemed panelists. We are going to, and it was our behind the stage joke with Matt and Anthony. So I told Anthony, because he's on my sheet first, Matt is on my sheet first. If I were to always just pitch to Matt first, it was nothing against him. But at either rate, we're going to start with Matt. And Matt, if you would do us the esteemed honor of introducing yourself and telling us a little bit about your background and currently where you are right now.
Thank you, Carla. It'd be my pleasure. You're using the word esteemed a little much. I'm starting to feel the pressure here. I don't know if I really fit that category. So my name is Matt. I am coming to you live from the chilly northwest suburbs of Chicago. I work fully remote for Ultimate Medical Academy based out of Tampa. UMA is my second admissions career. I was a born and raised career education corporation man, started off as a rep and a trainer and a director and got into training. I joined UMA during their online startup. They had a couple of campuses and I was part of the online startup. Obviously, we're still here and rocking, so proud not only of the growth, but how we've built what we've built culturally, student outcomes, all of that. My career at UMA, I started off in like admissions production, right? Director of a team, director of a division. And when we were a call center, right? So switching to fully remote was a big transition. And I was fortunate to be part of that change. And that's where we have come up with our ramp program for new hires. We call it nesting. It's the period right out of training, but we've really figured out some good practices to help fully remote admissions reps get up and running in a new job.
That is awesome. Well, welcome and thank you for that. I'm so excited. Okay, well, I'm going to use the word esteem again. I just feel like, maybe they need crowns at this point. So Anthony, welcome and thank you for joining us. Why don't you share a little bit about yourself as well?
Hello, I'm Anthony. So I'm Vice President of Enrollment and Graduate Services with San Joaquin Valley College. I've been with the college for 12 years, started off in career services and worked my way into various roles. Apparently, when you work really hard and have no life, you get other responsibilities. And so my primary function in today's world is I am over 3 different verticals. So I'm in charge of admissions, financial services, and career services. The college itself started in 1977. So we just celebrated our 45-year anniversary, which we're very excited about. We started in the Central Valley. I specifically reside and live in Bakersfield, where I work remotely to our 15 locations in California. So we're as far north as Sacramento, Rancho Cordova, and as far south as Rancho Mirage, Palm Springs area. And so we have probably about 24 different type of programs with SJVC, all the way from allied health to trades, and business. We offer certificates, associate's degrees, and also bachelor's degrees. My previous experience all is from staffing itself. That's where I started in career services, but worked primarily with Apple One and worked in their national accounts, and have always been bouncing around everywhere, but I've always been in California. My other piece that I do, I don't know if I would call it a hobby, but I'm very involved in government relations with SJVC and meeting with our different elected officials and across the country and representing us on Hill Day. SJVC itself is a part of SJVCI, and so we own 3 different institutions, most recently purchase of SBBC, Santa Barbara Business College, and about 3 to 4 years ago purchased Carrington College, which is in the Western United States.
Okay, see, and that does qualify for esteem.
That is esteemed for sure. Both of them are.
It sounds like a lot of steam, which I hear is hot air. So there's a lot of.
That's great. No.
The one with the
Esteemed
E
for
in
sure.
front of it. Yes. Okay. All righty. So I think I'm going to take it from here. Valerie, I think that's correct, right? So I will go over the agenda and get us started. So the agenda, we're going to focus on 3 areas, guys. And so who is the ideal admission advisor? We'll cover some, get some insight there. How to make and retain the right hire. I know as a former executive in the same seats you guys are sitting in is the turnover, right? The painful turnover and having to start all over again. And then lastly, we're going to have some conversation that centers around top onboarding and training tactics. So I think from there, and then we'll move, of course, into Q&A and spend maybe about 10 minutes at the end. We're going to hold Q&A to the end. If there is a question, though, that is a burning question that comes out, we definitely will field that question, but we definitely want to save time at the end, maybe about 8 to 10 minutes for you guys to submit your questions. And so with that being said, I think we're ready to jump right in. Okay, so I'm going to read off the question or where we're going, and then I am going to sort of, Matt, I'm going to pitch to you first. We're round robin this. So the first question, guys, that we're going to address is what traits and characteristics do you look for when seeking admissions advisor applicants? It's almost like that clock, that silence, that dun, 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 dun.
Right. So when seeking applicants, so a little background really quick, 30 seconds, I think will be helpful. So I mentioned that I am responsible for running the team in our nesting program, right? Those first few weeks on the job, getting up and running. My team also, within the past year, has taken on the responsibility of centralized interviewing for all of admissions. So a little funky when we first did that, right? I think most managers want to hire their own people and absolutely understandable. But there's been a number of positives, consistent interviewing practices, consistent feedback to the recruiting team. I'll tell you, one of the biggest positives has been the trainers that work with them when they are first starting the job are the trainers that interviewed and hired them. And so they get to learn from their successes or opportunities interviewing. They also have a sense of who is going to be coming into the role and why, you know, they said yes, what they liked about him in the interview, and can reinforce some of those characteristics. The other thing I wanted to say as part of my answer is, I'll tell you, what I personally look for now has evolved a lot in the last 10 years, right?
Okay.
That, listen, that type A, charismatic, engaging, extrovert, that still works, right? The competitive, driven, accountable, goal-oriented, we'll all take those when we find them. I would say now as important as ever, especially for us, since it's fully remote, a responsible, hardworking person that takes pride in their work. Like literally, if they show up every day, work hard and care about doing a good job, and let us get them passionate about caring about the students too, we can train them on the skills for the phone calls or the follow-ups or whatever. And the other thing too, someone taught this to me way early in my career. If you just keep saying one more thing, you can get away with talking for a long time. So my last thing would be, when interviewing, candidates that are looking to help people, like I want to help people, that's not bad. Candidates that are passionate about what we're helping students do, like that's good to great, right? Because if they're passionate about what we're actually doing, they're not just willing to have an honest conversation, they're seeking out that honest conversation that can be a little uncomfortable sometimes, like for certain people. So I think really that passion for specifically this, what we're doing with our students, is a big one too.
Okay, Anthony, I love that.
For me, number one is integrity. Integrity is very hard to identify in an interview, so you're going to try your best. But in our world of admissions, we have enough thrown at us as far as regulatory bodies are concerned. And so integrity is first and foremost very, very important. And that goes beyond admissions. You know, just having the opportunity to be in student services for financial services and career services, that's number one. Second is belief. Belief is absolutely important. They have to believe and show interest in what we do. You can't hire somebody just because they have sales experience. There's tangible goods and there's intangible goods. We sell an intangible good. There's a lot more that comes to what we are doing, because it's not only getting the education, is do they know and what they are doing with that education. So they have to have that deep investment and belief in what we do. The other one is they have to be really intrigued by people, because over 50% of what we do in admissions is listening. And if we do listen the right way, we are invested in people. We shouldn't be invested in the win and getting the enrollment and just bringing somebody on just because. This is not a game and it's not a point system. So somebody who is intrigued by individuals and wants to learn more about the person that they are speaking with. Lastly, the last characteristics that I've always seen, well, somebody who's fearless, somebody who's just fearless to ask. We ourselves have so much built up in our mind of what's the person going to say? How are they going to answer this? And that fearlessness goes it goes beyond what we can. You can't train somebody being fearless. And so that is absolutely important. And everyone's in such a unique position regarding hiring. If you said hiring is difficult this year and you told me hiring was difficult in 2019, those are very different definitions of being difficult for hiring. And you have to, again, to what Matt had said, it's your perception is different. What you were interviewing was different. Before it was, I want somebody with experience. I want somebody who has the admissions experience that can come in and hit the ground running. Now, I don't know that that's an ideal trait that I want, because you spend 3 months untraining them what they've already learned. And so it's really important that you stick to the core characteristics of a good person. and try and find that person that's fearless and really will hit the ground running, asking the right questions and getting to know people, because admissions is extremely complicated, but really it's just getting to know people. Try and simplify.
Mhm.
And,
You know, if
you
I
know-
may say, Carla, I love that both Anthony and Matt have mentioned pivoting, changing, and growing with the times. Admissions isn't the same that it was, you know, a few years back. I love that they're both are aware of that and changing as times come. So I just love that both of you said that.
And I think even going deeper than that, Violet, too, is not just changing with the times, understanding and recognizing the times have changed. And with that, people, that prospective student has changed as well. So we have to continue to adapt to, you know, the student that we're getting. And that leads to, there is a second part to that question as well. And I think Anthony sort of leaned into it a little, where the question is, how much weight does personal skill sets, right, have? And like he said, we have been in the past trained to look at the hard skills, like, and especially in admissions in the older days, it was about the number. So we needed that salesperson. Of course, I never wanted the car salesperson, but I wanted someone, you know, you've run into those a few times. But at the end of the day, as the positions or the position itself has morphed and changed and grown, really, I think, and I just want your input, Anthony and Matt, on how much, if we had to look at it, how much weight are you now putting on those personal skill sets versus those hard skill sets of, you know, listening, and do they actually have that sales acumen? Of course, we don't want it to come off salesy, because then that negates some of the personal, but how much weight do you put on that, the personal skill set? I'll go back to Matt.
I'll go first.
Okay.
Or either one.
Yeah.
So for me, it's still 50-50, just because there is, what I say early on when we're bringing or onboarding employees is we're going to provide the technology, we're going to provide the desk, we're going to provide the computer, we're going to provide the training. Everything else you have to bring to the table. You have to bring it to the table. And we'll make sure that we have all those best systems in place to get you successful. But at the same time, that can evolve. Their skill sets, in some cases, can be the skill sets that they lack can be supported through the appropriate leadership and technology. Because when you also think about what admissions look like today versus 10, to 15 years ago, we're trying to eliminate more of the errors, more of the decision-making that comes from an employee, if you will. I don't know if that sounds good or not, but because we want the technology to drive more outcomes and let the employee skill set shine while it points you in the right direction. I hope that makes sense. Because when we allow, and this happens with any industry, and I saw this especially with staffing as well, is we let ourselves, we're our worst enemy. We could say, oh, that person's not going to say yes because of that, or, oh, I don't know if I should ask that question. Is it the right time? The technology now that we have available to us in admissions removes a lot of those pieces. It'll put the call in front of you. It'll say, hey, this person meets this criteria. And so let's go ahead and talk to them because they're probably further in the funnel than, somebody who's really fresh coming into the funnel. And eliminating that almost creates an easier job for an advisor to eliminate them from the distraction and noise that prevents them from being successful. So I hope I answered that question right, but for me, it's still a delicate balance.
Okay, fair enough. Matt, what about you, Matthew?
So I am not 50-50. I'd say I'm more on the personal traits end of the spectrum than the hard skills. Although it's not that far off if it's 60-40 or 70-30, whatever it is. Here's what I would say though, too. The resumes of successful admissions reps that we onboard are all over the map, right? Also, though, Carla, you mentioned like back in the day looking for that sales persona, right? Because that energy and confidence was something that was really successful. That can fool you in an interview too. I would say a simple answer here, and it's not easy, but really try and find their why. Why are you interested in this position? If your resume is a perfect match, but you're applying because it's work from home and you like helping people, that's a little vague. That doesn't mean you can't do it, but I need to dig a little bit deeper. If your why is, I love doing what I'm doing, but I don't feel good about it because my customers end up with not a great experience, or I like working hard, I like achievement, and in my role, I'm achieving the heck out of everything, and nobody cares. Nobody cares, and the customers aren't happy. And so if there's a way in an interview, again, not easy, to really try and find a couple of different times their why about this sort of role or specifically this position, I think that can give you a lot of insight into what you can do with the skills that they may or may not have.
Yeah. And I think that's
one other thing too, and I'm so sorry to, when Anthony answered, we both answered that first question, right? I think I used the word passion and he used the word belief, if I have that right. If they are believe in what we're doing and or are passion, to me, those went together. They want to do a good job for the right reasons, which is good for the school and the students and everybody, right? So the
everything falls into place if they have those.
Absolutely, yes.
And I totally agree. And one thing too, bringing back, circling back to Anthony, the first thing when he said integrity, it really took me back a time where, as a regional director for one of the schools that I was, we had a person, and I'm sure, you live long enough in this profession, you run into some people that don't believe in integrity like we would want them to. And one of the things that he said, a situation happened. There was something that wasn't done the right way, and it was an emergency call. And at the end of the day, it was a quick call. And he said, I don't care about missing the number, but we're going to always miss the number the right way. So, and that was the last day that person ever worked for the company. But it really, when you have leaders that take that type of ownership, it's not just about our admissions level. It's not about the assistant admissions director. It is really from the top down that belief has to be, and when he made that definitive decision, I was saying to myself, I know I'm with the right company, because that was key for me, regardless whether it was admissions or anything. Do we operate with the highest of integrity? And if we do that, then that means in our settings, then we're doing that for our customers, which are internal, our staff, our team, and especially the students that enroll in our program. So I think, all of those, the reflection are very good things. And I thank you guys for that. Okay, so now we're going to move into question number 2. And I'm going to state the question, but we have a little poll with this one as well. So this question centers around the retention of our admissions advisors. So if we could pull up, I think our first, do I see the poll? Oh, there it is. Okay. So if you guys can see that, the question, I'm just going to read it because it's just me. Do you have a retention strategy in place? And this one's very simple. Yes or no, right? And so it'll be interesting to see, because sometimes people just think retention is we hope people will stay, but we really, in an administrative role, may not give that much weight to having a formal strategy to retain our team. So let's see, host and panelists. They said host and panelists cannot vote. Oh, we can't vote. Look, you took the fun out of it. Oh man, let's see. So do you have a retention strategy in place? So we have 54% said yes, and 46, it's almost 50-50, but it's so, what I'm seeing is such a high number say no. Guys, never fear, you're in the right place. This is what we're going to talk about. So hopefully for those who don't have a strategy in place, we're able to give them some little nuggets of consideration of things that they could do. So with that being said, let's go ahead and Anthony, we're going to go to you first. What are some of the things, how do you retain admissions advisors, or what are some things that you recommend be done to retain admissions advisors?
So it's a good question. I think a lot of companies are still wet cement for a lot of companies, while a lot of organizations do have retention strategies. They're trying to figure out, like, in today's times, is it the right one? We've been evolving dramatically in the last 3 years with the whole COVID piece. And what we had found early on is our launching of employee is wonderful. Like, we can cross those boxes off, we can test them, they get it. Scores are high on how they're tested, and it's good. The part that we struggled with early on was what we call trailing edge training. So how are we coming back to those points? Because we offload on an advisor early on, or an employee. They receive so much at the beginning, but they're only going to retain probably about 20% of what's brought to them. So we had to set up systems in place. How do we follow up on those pieces? The other thing that really we started focuses on the seasonality of what takes place in Q1, what takes place in Q2, what takes place in Q3, because we saw correlation between some data about turnovers that took place in each of these, because it's a different skill set. The skill set that if you bring in somebody into a lead-rich environment in Q1, the tools that you use in Q1 do not work in Q2. And so you need to train to that seasonality. So that specific layering was important. Another piece that we're looking at is time that they've been with the organization. So are these new green folks that might need to have more practice in some of these other areas, as opposed to the ones that have been with us over a year? They might need enhancement training in these, other areas. With all of that said, I think the major piece that is very important is fostering an environment of continuous feedback, because it is so easy in a performance-driven department to be extra critical of an employee. What people take for granted is how often can we positively affirm our employees on the things they are doing right. It's very easy to come in critical, and that will drive out an employee real quick. But the one-on-one meetings and the relationship with their manager is absolutely important, because when a one-on-one takes place, is the employee receiving the information that is given from their director or their leader? The director could be amazing. They can have a wonderful resume. They could win all these awards. But if the information they have to share is not being received, what's the point? And so that relationship and fostering feedback, like, I'm going to meet with my employee today, or I'm going to meet with my supervisor, and I expect feedback. That's part of our culture, is I expect that feedback, and I'm going to use it the next day. And so we've had to put in systems to really help tune our one-on-one relationships with our employees at our campuses, because if they don't have the relationship, it's not a win-win for us.
Oh, I've got so much I could like high five that. Yes. I say high 10. Okay, we're gonna move over to Matthew, and then I'll just make some comments there. Matthew, what do you do or have done or would recommend?
I see Carla like trying to run onto the panel side, and then run onto the host side, and then run onto the panel side.
Right. It's like,
I want to hear you ask yourself a question. That's going to be the best part of the panel. So, two things. I wrote down a whole bunch of stuff, but two things. Number one, onboarding. Our department went through a very significant cultural shift over the past 12 months. And onboarding was a critical component of, sure, the success of the department and the student outcomes, but a critical component of our retention strategy. That's why we linked the hiring to the Nest team, and the team that runs Nest, which I'm proud to be a part of, and my counterpart that runs New Hire, we work very closely in tandem, so that this experience of training on the what, they can take their time and train on the what for a few weeks. And then they're with us, and we help them with the how. And there is a difference, and it's not easy, and it can be really frustrating. And so we do it in a positive environment, controlled environment, supportive environment, high touch environment, right? And then we transition them to their permanent teams. They still need help, like Anthony said, it doesn't all stick just because you put it all out there at the beginning, right? But we have this more layered on, get them up and running together approach that's worked really well. And when we've linked that to our hiring process, we've seen a lot of retention has improved for us, and that is a piece of the puzzle for sure. The second thing that I'll get into, and I'll be as brief as possible, is culture. So the three things that I wrote down here, we really shifted to a culture of quality, and not just a quality phone call, but like take pride in your job, right? Do a great job on that conversation with that student. And if you really try your best every time, a lot of students are going to go to school and a lot of them are going to do well. And when it doesn't go that way, then it was for the best, right? But instead of trying to achieve a metric just to achieve the metric, just it's part of our world in admissions, just doing great work. And that takes a village and consistent cultivating on that piece of the culture. But we've seen a lot of lift there. Also, just a tremendous shift to make sure we're as student focused as possible, right? The old school hire salespeople thing of back then, right? Well, we're able to find people that actually, they care about doing a good job for the student and they want to see them succeed. And like, we've really gone all in on cultivating that and putting that in lights, and like letting them isn't the right way to say it, but making sure that they can feel good about what they're doing, because that's why they wanted to do it in the first place. Sometimes in the past, we went so fast, they didn't get to feel good about it. And that was a miss, right? They'll stick around the more they feel good about it. And the third thing, I'll echo what Anthony said, absolutely. Our expectations of leadership are through the roof. People will stay engaged with a great leader, a respectful leader, a leader that develops you, a leader that blocks and tackles, right? And so feel like they're growing, feel like they're respected, feel like they're part of a team, feel like they're valuable, all of that. And that's all, a lot of that comes from a very high level of leadership. And so that's not easy and it's not perfect, but we have very high expectations as far as that goes.
Well, I tell you, so I pulled away from that for sure for the both of you is the feedback, that feedback circle for me stood out. The culture, of course, creating a culture where people feel not only seen but heard, where it's an environment that encourages feedback in two ways. Like I, as the employee, can feel very comfortable with telling my supervisor that maybe I need more from them. And the supervisor being receptive, because, you know, sometimes we think we're giving what they need, but we're giving what we think they need, as opposed to really saying, hey, am I giving to you what you need versus, you know, what I'm trying to do, and just really being open or giving them that door to walk through to say, hey, from you, because, you know, sometimes there is that lack of communication between the supervisor and the employee. And the supervisor thinking they're doing the right thing, but the employee is like not receiving it the way you're intending. So just having that open door where that employee could come back and says, hey, it would help me better if we could do this for me, you know, not just necessarily do it for the group. And so I think, and then the other was that leadership expertise for sure. The leaders have to be in tune as well as with their team, not just hiring. And, you know, something else that stood out, that not saying that I ever did this, but in the conversation, I'd like to throw this out, is just something new is, you know, encouraging, you know, admissions can be a singular kind of success. It's an individual kind of thing. We work with the individual. This is you know, these are your leads that you are working. But then what about, you know, maybe we have a weekly team lead, someone who's rah-rahing the team, you know, where they can get together themselves and check their own numbers and, hey, are you struggling over here? Or they're leaning on each other to help. You know, you may have someone who's great at closing and someone else who's struggling. You know, are they sharing those best practices? Go ahead, Matthew.
Can I comment?
Yes.
Did I do enough of those? I have a great thing to say, Carla, facial expressions that you know. So
It did.
I didn't mention this, but you brought it up and it's so important. We have a large department and we're remote. So it's people are in their bedrooms and living rooms and kitchens kind of by themselves doing it. And the daily grind is what it is. It can be, right?
Mhm.
We have a very high touch, high frequency team environment. Like, and it's, we make it mandatory and not everybody's in the mood for it every morning, but the energy from a group of hardworking, dedicated people towards a collective goal, that's an energy that is so powerful that we don't leave it up to chance. It is a high recognition. We have recognition for yesterday's successes, recognition for silly little things, official recognitions quarterly, and also a lot of fun with it. And that's just, I don't want to say we force it. That sounds weird. We just don't leave it up to chance. We make sure
Right.
that is happening as part of our, not weekly, but like daily routine. And it's funny, when new team members join, our energy won't always be their cup of tea, right? Maybe they're not a morning person or we're a little loud or whatever, right? A couple of weeks into it, if we don't have that morning meeting, they miss it. It's like your coffee, right? So I think that's so critical that you mentioned.
Yeah, and I think everything that we had discussed, a lot of those pieces were either taken for granted or really put in a dangerous place through the last 3 years. I mean, culture itself, feedback and engagement, and two, even authentic communication, because you have a bunch of leaders that were worried about losing advisors. And I don't want to say, you know, this, or I don't want to say this, but, you know, we love, do a lot of work with Brene Brown, not with her, but we love Brene Brown and her. And one of the things that always pops out that she says is to be clear is to be kind. And so for us, you know, whether it's good or bad, share information to help develop people. But I will tell you, especially we're very passionate about True Colors. I'm a certified trainer in True Colors. And one of the pieces there that we always talk about with our blues is it is a talent to give a compliment. And so while we're all in stress and we all have numbers to meet and, you know, and numbers, it's not about numbers, it's about people. And what people need to understand is you need to make people feel good, show them what they're good at. You keep, you know, coming at people for what they're not good at. It's not going to help them. It's not going to motivate them. Adding more to people doesn't get us to where we need to be. You have to draw the map. You have to help them see, you know, what A looks like to get to B. And so that authentic communication, and again, goes to engagement and culture. You can't have that level of authenticity and communication if you don't have those relationships.
You know, and if I may chime in here, because I might extend the question here, because both of you have talked about the onboarding, which I know, you know, usually there's a lot of excitement with anybody, you know, like, hey, new job, new role, new company. But how do you address burnout? And that might be its own webinar, by the way. I posted a podcast from a think tank that addressed what, you know, a company should do about burnout. And it also comes up in my conversations with leaders like yourself. Sometimes it's providing them with, you know, your reps with better tools to be more efficient. Can you imagine doing the same job in half the time? Sometimes it's addressing equity and opportunities for promotion. And I'm sure you know, I think you mentioned, Anthony, like, hey, how can we get those folks prepared to maybe, you know, get promoted within their role? But, you know, as short as possible, can you address some of those burnout topics? And yeah, those may be reps that don't feel comfortable enough to address their, you know, their supervisors, their managers on that sort of topic.
So your question is how burnout topic or advisors not feeling confident to discuss, have those conversations with their leaders?
Those clear, you know, I love that you mentioned Brene Brown, but yeah, that transparency.
Well, a lot
to
of
be able to address that.
A lot of the times in conversations, we like to lead with questions as opposed to directives. And so if you have the right technology, it tells you all that. like we're looking at the same reports. We're looking at the same things that look red and green. And so if a leader knows how to have those conversations, they can feed it in the right way to help bring that into that dialogue. So for instance, if calls are low or interviews are not going well, yeah, you might have an advisor that doesn't want to put a light on that, but you can start that well, talk to me about your interviews. So how are your interviews going? Hey, you had 3 interviews last week. That was great, or that was bad, depending on your, company metrics. How did those go? How, what do you think I could have done to support you a little bit better? All right, what did you think you did great at? And so by tapping in all of these different areas, you can bring out, it's what we do in admissions with prospects. Why can't we do it with people and our employees? And so those different elements, there's a way to highlight those pieces and get those layered questions out so that an employee can bring it up. And you, if you're a well-tuned leader, can see where they're coming up and where they're falling short and what they're not comfortable talking about. Say, oh, you hesitated a little bit. Is everything okay? Is there something I can help you with in that area? And, let's say don't bring it. Say, well, would you mind that I give you a couple pieces of recommendation? All right, so let's talk about this. I really think that you're awesome at this. I really think that you could take it to the next level if you focus on 1, 2, and 3. How about we try that? Do you want to try that the next 2 days? Let's see what that looks like. And hey, at the end of the day, you might say, you know what, that doesn't work for me. Let's go ahead and try another route. But I'm here. If something's not working out for you, let's pivot. Let's fail, but let's fail fast and let's fail together, because that's the only way we're going to get better. This is a team thing. We're going to do this together. So you have to be able to have those conversations. A lot of that stuff we pull from Franklin Covey in meaningful conversations. But if you have a really trained leader, you can get to those outcomes, because again, we're all looking at the same reports.
That's great.
And I'd also like to add to just what Anthony said, not just the things he said, but bringing up, Stephen Covey, bringing up Brene Brown, some of those things that sometimes internally we think we have it all, right? And they're just some unique thought leader or some idea or something that sparks, oh my gosh, we never thought about that. Maybe we can incorporate. So really being open to looking at those things, because again, we're people. So we're people first. We can't get away from that. We're people first. And so I think when we address that is understand that our team members need us just as much as we want them to understand how our students will need us. And I think that's critical. So I thank you for that. Violet, that was a great, add on to that other side of the coin for that.
Because when you look at it in reality, us in this, I'm not doing the important work. My job is the least important job. The ones sitting in that desk, they're the ones engaging with the public. And so I'm not looking to beef my skills up. How do I get them to own it and believe in themselves? Because we hired them because they were great. And if they're working for us, they are great, but they have to make that decision.
And I think, go ahead, Matthew, go ahead.
I didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead.
Oh, no, please. I'm not the panelist. You go ahead.
So, Violet, your original question, right? When I heard you ask it, to me, that's not an admissions question. That's a leadership question. It doesn't matter what industry we're in, right? And earning the trust and respect of your colleagues, up, down, or sideways, does not happen in one amazing conversation. If I'm calling you on Teams and your first thing is, what did I do on that call that you want to talk to me about? I've already lost over the past 6 months. I blew it, right? But over our time working together, if every time I call you, I ask how you are, how your day is, how things are going, right? I ask how I can help you. And then the other, just again, general leadership, and it's not like I'm the genius in the room, but for me, I statements work really well, right? Here's what I'm hearing. You tell me if I'm crazy, but yada, 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 right? Or here's what I've noticed. listen, in some conversations we have to have that are more direct or a little bit more honest, and to be clear is to be kind, right? But you could have that same respect and trust conversation and just say, okay, I've got to have a direct conversation with you about the results that we're at. Let's go through it together, and then let's work together on our plan. Like, the more they feel that you're on the same, you're sitting next to each other, right? Facing the same direction, then you're sitting above. The more you cultivate that trust and respect, which is when they will be much more comfortable to come solicit your help, your feedback,
Right.
or say, I'm failing, help me. Like, that's the hardest thing for someone to say. I'm failing, I'm scared, I'm frustrated, I'm in over my head, please help me. That's so hard for a human to do. And it just, it takes constant strong leadership to help them be able to do that.
And it does. And remember, the stronger you are, the things that, to me, one of the key or critical components of a leader is to admit that I'm not perfect as well. And so when you can do that, and you can own even your faults, big, small, or whatever, it really empowers your team, because now you become human. Now they understand, yes, there is an expectation, but if I slip a little bit, they're going to also be there to help and support me. So it's not a cutthroat, oh my God. Yes. So I am, this is just wonderful. Okay. Now I know.
Thank you.
Violet, you go ahead.
I loved, I think Matt, was it you who said, you made some football references, like I tackle or something, like, so it sounds like, the consistency and connection with your team builds trust. So if they know that you as a leader are going to stand up for them when they need, when they need more help, that's going to build that relationship, which can defer that burnout feeling. I'm taking notes. I love it. I love all of this.
Well, I think what we're going to do for time's sake, I was looking at questions 4, and I think in some respects, some things we touched on in the 4th question that talked about feedback and stuff like that. But I'd really like to give some time to our topic question number 3 that centers around how do we incorporate the use of tech to help with keeping our admissions advisors engaged. And, we had mentioned times have changed. Before COVID, we did one thing, and now we're, like you, Matthew, you're totally 100% remote, right? Prior to that, I don't think that really ever happened to a high degree. And so how are we leveraging technology to really help us with, the assignments as well as, and then before we answer the question, we do have the second poll. So I'd like to see the results on this one. Okay. Poll number 2. There we are. Okay, so it says, how often does your institution evaluate its tech stack? Oh, love this one.
When I see this question, I always picture the Jetsons, where, a lot of it is AI, automatic, and we're not quite at the Jetsons yet, but love that, we're getting there.
Okay, and for those of you in the audience who do not know the Jetsons, you're going to have to Google them, because that means we're dating ourselves.
Did I just date myself on that? Darn it.
I clearly, that was one of my favorite shows.
The Flintstones, the Jetsons, yep. You guys know how old I am. Cool.
They're probably on YouTube now. Okay.
I used to be able to make the noise of that scooter thing that they drove. I'm not doing it.
You're gonna have to show us now. Maybe we'll wait till the end of the webinar.
Okay, so we do have a high percentage that say they don't know how often it is, and that could be because there's an IT department that manages that, and let's see, we don't conduct regular evaluations, 22%. And then yearly, we've got at the height. So the majority, we've got 31%. Well, no, I thought we could combine, but we can't. So we don't conduct regular evaluations. That might be, something to lean into a little bit here. Guys, as we go forward, and we are evaluating now 4%. Okay, so don't know, we don't. Okay, so from that perspective, Anthony and Matthew, it's almost like you can sort of pick out your area there. Maybe give us some insight on what you guys do in terms of that. And, what does the future look like possibly as well?
Matt, you want to go first? Sorry, keep
Sure,
going.
I'll go.
Go.
I'll start with a really simple, I guess, way to answer the question. And I don't know if this is all the way of what you're looking for, but I'll go back to what I said about our high touch team culture, right? So there's a lot you could do in Microsoft Teams if you learn it and get to know it and leverage it and all of those things. You know, every morning and typically maybe once other time throughout the day, like we're together on camera in a team setting, right? And it's funny because when we talk about it to new hires, on camera seems like a requirement to make sure that it's being in a room together. Like if you were in a classroom, you wouldn't sit in the hall and listen through the door. Like it's being in a room together, which we lose if we're not in a physical space. And so that's important to us. And listen, you can do that well or you can do it poorly. If you have to force it, then you're not doing it very well because you're not making it engaging and positive and fun and recognizing and all of those things, right? We utilize the chat quite a bit. There's all sorts of little funny polls. You know, somebody put in there, make sure that your team is taking breaks so they don't get burnt out. You know, one of the things that's really important for the leaders in our department, right? Like we're scaled, high volume, outbound admissions reps in their homes. We are constantly engaging all day, whether it's one-on-one chat, one-on-one phone call, little small group thing, group chat, formal with a training tip, group chat, funny with a joke. It's all day to keep them, exactly that word, to keep them engaged. Otherwise, you just kind of get into the doing it sort of thing. So that's not a very fancy answer. It's a lot of elbow grease, I think, but the work that you do yields so much returns for people enjoying what they're doing and staying into it all day long.
For tech, we are a very data-focused organization. Everything from a strategy map to Power BI's, Microsoft, systems for admissions, financial services, career services. It is, I always say, if you want to, we can track breathing and heart rate if we needed to. Now, that's a slippery slope because too much data, again, removes from we are in the people business. We are in the people connection business. It's important to front load those concepts when we are talking about data. But the great thing about data is it's a starting point. It helps develop a map. It helps show us where we need to improve and where we are successful. And so it's, again, a slippery slope, and the pendulum definitely goes back and forth depending on what world we're living in. But we could not get a clear picture of who we are without data. We need that crystallization in order to make good decisions to support people. If we don't have data, a lot of it's subjective and noise to how we feel. And while feelings and subjectivity, that's data as well. That objective clarity is extremely important for us to be successful, bottom line.
One other thing too, so, and this goes back to a question from a little bit earlier about people feeling comfortable, and we have, like I said, big cultural transition over the last year, really invested in a lot of what Anthony just stated, and say the same thing he did. You have to be very deliberate about pulling it out and training it. It could be overwhelming, it too much, paralysis by analysis, all of that. We've also taken methodical steps in putting as much of the relevant data in front of the reps themselves without it being overwhelming. There's a balance, right? But so then it's not me coming to tell you that you're ahead or behind. You have your own view of everything, and I'm here to help, hold accountable, train, motivate, you know, those things that you need me for. you don't need me to tell you where you're at. You can see where you're at, and it can be done right and it can be done wrong, but that's proven beneficial, and we're just getting good at it.
So Matt, you bring up an excellent point, because we love data. Leaders just love it. They love pressing this button and pulling this drop down and clicking on this and hitting refresh. We love it. But to your excellent point here, we need to make sure there's simplicity behind it. And so you reminded me of something that we did. We get excited, like, oh, now we can track this and we can track that. What we did as a whole overview this last few months is, okay, hold on. Pull everything that they don't need to worry about. Like, they don't need this. They don't, if they can just focus on these three reports, and they could see themselves go from A to B to C, and if that's all they need, then great. Just give them that. They don't need to have the 20 bells and whistles and, you know, all of this noise, because that's really what it is noise. Then it becomes, I can't do this because of this, and I can't do this because of that. And what we want to highlight is, what can you do? What are you great at? And if you just focus on these three things, I tell you what, that simplicity goes be. You could have the fanciest tools, but the simplicity behind the data and pictures, great, do it.
Right.
And you know, I know our time is getting short, but I wanted to just throw this in, because this question, in October of last year, I hosted an event for beauty school owners. And one of my speakers was my former boss, one of my former boss years ago. He's now an executive with Amazon. And one of the things he shared is how Amazon measures, you know, their revenue goals, meaning, but they do it through survey. So they don't even talk to, you know, if you're at the executive level, you, of course, you're talking dollars, numbers, and all of these things, right? But their people don't feel that. And all they see is a survey, and it's a 10-question survey. And he says he can't even log into his work computer or, you know, email or whatever until he answers 3 questions every morning in the survey. But the top 4 survey questions are revenue-driven questions, and the other 6 support one of the 4. So based on responses and where they, you know, those responses lie, they know what KPI it will impact, and then they address it that way. So I thought that was phenomenal. So my little mind is like, oh my gosh, you know, the power of surveys. So we don't often think as surveys being part of our tech stack, right? That really helps us gather data, but it might just be something, you know, to look at how well might it fit in your businesses to gain, you know, data, what you're using, how we can pull that out. So I just thought I'd throw that out. That was just
because at the end of the day, what you look at gets measured. We're a big fan of that. And that's one of the reasons you bring up a good point. We don't use dollar and cents. Even our campus leaders don't look at dollars, and we don't talk about that. That's not what we're here for. We want to make sure that people are here for the right reasons, and that's to help grow individuals and grow our communities. That's it. And so, of course, we're a business, but those conversations don't need to happen where the meaningful work is taking place. It's just not, for us, it's just not necessary.
And I think that's critical, because, you know, eons ago, that was not the case, right?
Right, correct.
That was not the case. So I'm glad we've shifted from that. So do we have time? I know, first of all, thank you, gentlemen, for participating today. This was awesome. And I know we're winding down, guys, really down. So if we could have 2 minutes versus the 1 on my clock. Do we have any questions that might be burning? I was looking at the Q&A and I didn't see any uploaded there. But if there's maybe 1 or 2 that they can throw in the chat, or if everyone thinks that we did a great job, please let us know that too. And I see Vivica is putting some information in there as well. So we're just thankful for today, and thankful for all of those who took the time to join us in this hour. I see there's 50, so this is great.
Yes. Yeah, it looks like Vivica is putting all of our LinkedIn profiles on here, so we'd be glad to connect with everybody who's on the call. Please reach out to us. I know Matt and Anthony, are willing, so is Carla, to just be a resource for you all. Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much. I can't thank you all enough for participating today. And even thanking the participants that are the attendees. Thank yourself, pat yourself on the back for investing in yourself, staying curious to learn about your industry from the experts today. I think that's a big deal. Just, the attendees that are here, sometimes I know that doesn't go undervalued for me. Anytime I see learners, I love it. I get excited about it. And I think I don't see, let me see, I think, was there a question? No, just a good job. Thank you.
We have one that just popped in. Oh, it said good job, LaTanya.
It's a good job. Yay. Yes, I agree.
Was it good job with the question mark, maybe?
No,
That's the easiest
down
question.
tone. Yeah, well, if there's no questions, I mean, I think that does it for us. Again, I can't thank you all enough. This was insightful. I took a lot of notes. I don't know if you'll be able to see, but I got myself notes because I always love learning from, one of the things I'll remember, Matt, you said it's not an admissions kind of like the burnout, it's a leadership. And I'll be here forever if I jot down or let you know everything I jotted down. But thank you so much, Carla, as well, for moderating. I feel like everybody is gonna learn from all of this. And yeah, I think, we'll let you all go. Again, I'm Violet with Lead Squared. Always love ending with a little bit of a mini commercial of who Lead Squared is. You'll probably hear from us eventually. Some of the folks that were on the call I saw from Eastwick, which are current customers, saw some folks from Ontario, Toledo, Kentucky. I love that they joined us from all over the country and even into Canada. So one of the things I'll last say, what's your vision for a CRM? Can it help your teams provide an impressive and successful student experience? We talked about technology, just touched on it today, but our goal is to help provide your admissions, financial aid, student success, marketing, alumni teams with the best in class technology to help them do their jobs more efficiently. Connect with us for a brief evaluation. Also, last thing, mark your calendars for our next webinar on our series. It's the rising pressures to secure enrollment and preventing burnout in 2023, which is interesting because I barely touched on it. We're going to do a whole session on that. There's a lot of psychology behind that and even defining and identifying burnout. That's February 16th, 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. Check your inbox for an invite. And please do connect with all of us on LinkedIn. We love that we had this participation in such a fruitful conversation. Thank you, folks. Thanks, Anthony. Thanks, Matt. Nice to meet you. Thank you, Carla.
Thank you for having us.
Appreciate it. Yeah, thank you so much and have a great rest of your day.
Bye.
You as well. Thank you.
Have a great day.
Bye, guys.
Bye.